The 2017 National Social Protection Policy, which was approved by the federal government in 2017, outlined plans to consolidate and expand social safety nets by creating national coordination councils, increasing funds, improving data collection and monitoring, and specifically targeting poor and vulnerable groups for support. Today, we bring you the concluding part of my conversation with Dr. Yowakwa Apera. I am Chana Ejaga. Up next is News Update. Stay with us.
The Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, has signed a Memorandum of Understanding on training and capacity building with the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. This took place during a courtesy call on the Director General, Professor Ayo Omotayo, at NIPSS, Kuru, Jos. Speaking during the meeting, the leader of the delegation and president of ICSAN, Fumi Otundayo, said ICSAN is the body registered by law to organize and conduct professional examinations to chartered secretaries and is the leading cause of championing the practice of secretaryship and good governance in Nigeria with the sole aim of achieving organizational goals.
ICSAN is the only professional body in Nigeria that is authorized by law to conduct examinations and certification that leads to professionals who are called chartered secretaries and administrators. And of course, we are at the core of corporate governance. We are at the core of leading and championing corporate governance, good corporate governance across board. That's what our institute is also very well known for.
She added that NIPSS is at the forefront of training, policy formation, and making of leaders from different sectors of the economy, which calls for synergy between the two institutions for the actualization of good corporate governance in Nigeria. While addressing the delegation, the Director General NIPSS, Professor Ayo Omotayo, said the institute is ready to collaborate with ICSAN on training of its staff and participants of other short courses organized by the institute, adding that a good society can only be achieved through good governance.
NIPSS is ever ready, differently from what we used to do, to collaborate. You say you have a center for corporate governance. We are looking for a better society. Better society cannot happen if governance is weak, or is not appropriate, or is not working. So we are willing to work with any organization that is properly registered and has mandates that align with our own goals and objectives. And I don't have any doubt that we qualify to work.
There was dialogue between members of both institutions to address areas of interest on the MOU for proper modifications in order to avoid breach of laws binding NIPSS. An MOU was signed by both parties after a series of deliberations to mark the beginning of a sustainable collaboration and academic partnership between the two institutions. The delegation thanked the management of NIPSS, adding that they are ready to work on the training of leaders to achieve long-term sustainable development in nation building.
We want to once again say a very big thank you on behalf of Council and the entire members of ICSAN. This is a very significant progress that we are making today with respect to making this strategic collaboration a reality.
The president, ICSAN, spoke on the outcome of the meeting and her expectations from the collaboration.
As we know, ICSAN is a professional body that is a leading voice in the promotion of good governance across board.
Vaku Ambi, reporting for NIPSS Policy TV.
I'm the businessman I am today because I scoured the world to find that feeling my clients want to wear. Yes, amen. This country makes it its business to inspire at every moment.
Own your moments in South Africa this Easter holiday. Explore new holiday deals at southafrica.net. Come journey with us.
Welcome back. This is Policy Focus. Now back to our topic. The National Policy on Social Protection is aimed at providing support and protection for vulnerable populations in Nigeria. It is also a known fact that before the National Social Protection Policy, Nigeria lacked a unified, comprehensive social protection framework at the national level. Though some limited programs targeting social protection do exist, coverage was low and programs were inefficient and coordinated. What is the story now? In the concluding part of the program, we have Dr. Iyowakwa Akpera, who is the country director, Give Directly Nigeria, and a board member of Network of Social Protection Advocacy in Nigeria. Thanks for joining us on this concluding part of the social protection policy that we've been looking at, and we have Dr. Iyowakwa Akpera, who has been telling us all about it. So following the mandate of this policy to ensure that Nigerian citizens have access to basic social services and infrastructure in Nigeria, to what extent has this been achieved?
Again, because there are no clear measuring indicators linked to the policy, it's hard to say. Even though you see huge government investment in a lot of public infrastructure, improving electricity, improving water supply to communities, the community electrification project, or rural electrification projects, a lot of investments going into those areas. Government pushing a lot of subsidies to agriculture, fertilizers, etc. Government pushing a lot of grains, releasing a lot of grains to, even recently we have announced, the government announced releasing grains, asking the customs to sell seized food products at subsidized rates to poor and vulnerable. A lot of this initiative, because you don't have clear measuring standards or monitoring indicators, it's difficult for you to say any meaningful impact that you have made in any of the sectors, right? So if you want to tie this to the policy, we must need to put the policy as a centerpiece to the poverty efforts, and we must clearly define. And the policy has gone ahead to define clearly the monitoring indicators. Now you need the Ministry of Planning, which has the coordinating or the convening power, to pull the various sectors or ministries in one place, either by the leadership of the governor, of the president sitting as the head of the steering committee, or the vice president, to bring the various sectors together and say, look, this is what will tell us if we are doing well or not. So in the Ministry of Education, all of your policy, all of your initiatives now must be tracked through the lens of these indicators. And you must feed this data report to the central port in planning that has the mandate to monitor government development efforts anyway, right? In health, you must design initiatives that answers these questions from this point of view, contributing to the database that sits with the plan here. And then planning, you must be able to monthly aggregate this and bring before the Federal Executive Council to say, here is what we have invested, here is what we have pushed to, here is what progress we are making. Every minister then moves from that point of view to go back and say, here is the progress we've made, here is the efforts that we need to make more. We must be deliberate about managing our scarce resources constructively in instituting accountability structures, but also monitoring indicators and structures that ensure that we are accounting for every dime spent. And this must be coming to a point where we are aggregating the overall efforts and showing clearly the impact for each of the efforts towards the overall question. Then the policy becomes very relevant. Then you can hold the policy accountable. Then you can actually sit down and review the policy and see how far it has helped to enhance investment in the sector towards meeting the policy objectives.
Wow, that's really, really very extensive. Earlier you talked about the surge in the rate of unemployment in Nigeria, and recently it has, in 2023, it has been recorded that it has surged to 5.0% in the third quarter of 2023 from 4.2%. How would you assess this policy in the area of employment and sustainable livelihood given the present economic realities?
If we even closely link two of government's employment schemes aimed at providing jobs for the unemployed and sort of a safety net from that angle, you look at the Directorate for Employment that does vocational training and startup for vocational endeavors for our youths. How much and how many of that has been achieved? The second bucket is our small-scale enterprise, SMEDEN, development agency, who attract small businesses and give them access to loans and small grants. I'm not sure up to date we've solved the question of how loans are equitably distributed and returns or repayments are made, or whether or not those figures are effectively put together towards this. The other implement is Empower. Empower started with 500,000 jobs to the unemployed, providing access and paying a stipend. There is still challenges as to how successful that program is. There will be arguments for those who are in and those who are out of it, but there is no clear measuring lens to say this is how far it's gone. But on the flip side, every year, the Bureau of Statistics releases its report that shows the alarming growth in our unemployment figures. So to what extent are these initiatives contributing to it? Because effectively, none of these initiatives is coordinated in a way and manner that results of its impact is contributing or it's being measured against the unemployed figures that we have. Because there is that absence of deliberate coordination or collaboration, even within government agencies. So SMEDEN sits this way, ND sit that way. Empower that constructively, you will argue that it should be with NDE, sits in humanitarian that side, and is being run that side. There's no coordination. So government is doing a lot. The budget shows that a lot of money is being pushed into it, but no impact is being shown because we cannot just put the values all together and match it against these indicators that are measuring the unemployed rates. So when we go out there to take the statistics that tells us our unemployment growth rate, we do not have the capacity to show how the efforts are going towards reducing that. Because we know it's a continuum. Every day you're producing graduates who are not without jobs. Every day they will continue to increase. So they are bound to do that. But then you're pushing in investments that are aimed at cushioning the effect or reducing it, but you're not able to measure that against the indicators that are measuring its growth. So you will never be in a position to constructively say, this is how much your efforts have gone to reducing it. So government is doing a lot, but government cannot show that it's doing a lot. Government cannot beat its chest that it's doing anything at all. Because simply, they don't not set up the structures and the system that will tell them and show the public that they're doing a lot. That's why an average Nigerian question your Bank of Industry loans. That's why an average Nigerian questions the initiatives of your Bank of Agriculture and tells you that the loans are given to the rich. Because they're not able to show this impact or this constructive evidence that tells you that this is how far this is growing. When you sit and argue with an average Nigerian on the efforts of government on poverty, you will say government has pushed enough to do cash transfer to 2 million, 1 million, all of that, school feeding program, everything. But then the average will say, who is the person that is getting this? You know why? It's not that the people are not getting it, but simply it's the fact that the government lacks the capacity to show that impact. And it's simply because of the fragmentation within government efforts. And the fact that even within government, agencies don't see eye to eye. In fact, even within ministries, departments don't see eye to eye. Talk of agencies and ministries. Government must fix this problem. Otherwise, as much as we are putting in, the less we are seeing. The Senate can argue from here till tomorrow about budgets and budget allocations and all of that. On the flip side of it, it's wishy-washy because we're not measuring the right result to show the impact. Meanwhile, these figures will continue to grow every single day. And the average Nigerian is feeling it because we're on the streets every day. But government is not able to show what it is done, it's been done to solve it, and we're not seeing it.
This is really, really extensive, and like you said, everything is multi-sectorial, interconnected, and all that. I was about to ask you about the synergy of government, MDAs, and the likes, but you have said something like that. Now, I'd like to ask, in your opinion as a professional, can you tell us exactly how is the government planning to finance such ambitious social programs? What steps are being taken to expand budgets, root out corruption, leakages, and not adding more debt while pursuing this policy mandate?
That's a big question, and maybe a question that you call the finance expert, the economic experts, the budget experts who sit in the room to be able to answer. But from a point of view of my social development, social protection lens, I'll say government needs to fix a lot of things. Now, our financial management structure is not very much defined sectorally. We budget as per ministries. Our ministry always have diverse mandates, right? That we are not able to perhaps map structurally. Usually in other developed economies of the world, governments use their physical space advantage to investing in public good. The primary job of government is the public or social good of its citizens. That is its role, to ensuring that it answers that question. But here, government, we are not able to constructively say that because first, we're not able to determine our physical space advantage that gives us what quantum of resources we have at our disposals to invest. So government goes ahead to provide this budget. However, to what extent do we have resources to support it? So government, for instance, earmarks 100 billion through the social investment budget for public housing for the poor and vulnerable. But how much of this, at the end of the day, are we able to release in actual sense? And to which budget line and to which ministry? Now, you see, I'm giving that example of the social investment budget, 500 billion annually. It's sitting with social investment. But one of the components is towards public housing. Is that tracked towards the housing budget line? The answer is no. It's tracked through the envelope of social investment. And so when you want to track the spend on public housing, you are bound to leave that budgetary line, right? If you want to track the impact of that investment, you're coming to look at the government housing line hosted within the Ministry of Housing or Transport or wherever that sits. So the Ministry of Housing and Transport does not have a view on the 100 billion budget that is annually on public housing. Tell me how it will be able to account for how much impact that is making. Meanwhile, the desk of housing sits here in Ministry of Transport and housing, for instance, I have no clue. And its sectorial allocation here, it's also to provide housing. So it's first double entry. Second, they are not seeing each other. They are running parallel. And so you cannot measure impact. So when you're looking at financing it, where are you actually financing public housing, for instance? Now, these are the fragmentations within the structures and the system. So to fix it to your question, resolve the fragmentation question by streamlining mandates and clearly defining roles and responsibilities, by clearly defining coordination and collaboration, by clearly defining the various accountability lines and structures that speaks to each other. And so the fight for development in our country is no longer on budgetary allocation, but on results and impact, because you have clearly defined the mandates for each, and you have clearly allocated resources accordingly, and you're clearly designed accountability structure that hold each of these sectors, each of these agencies, each of this ministry accountable to their mandate. So when you go to housing, Minister of Housing and Transport, for instance, and you're holding them accountable on huge monies that were allocated to housing, he'll simply tell you, I don't know what is happening with the social investment pot annually. And you cannot hold him accountable to that because it doesn't sit with him, right? If you go to Minister of Education and you say the SUBEB law mandates school feeding, it mandates free education from primary 1 to JSS 3, you say brilliant, but hey, I do not have access to the envelope that provides meals to students, even though by law I am mandated to do school feeding program. So annually, the SUBEB budget should ordinarily also include the component of school feeding. But the Ministry of Education will tell you if you want to go school feeding, go to social investment. They are the ones with the money. Meanwhile, the annual budgeted to SUBEB, because school feeding is also an element in SUBEB, includes school feeding. So that complete angle goes dim in terms of accountability. So how do you begin to relate it? So those fragmentation questions have to be solved by clearly defining those mandates. Then clear leadership, clear coordination, clear accountability structures will then help solve and resolve our issues towards addressing our challenges.
Okay. So how can we tackle cultural prejudices against marginalized groups like single parents, persons with disabilities, and the girl child in the implementation of this policy?
The federal government came up with the Disability Act that provides the framework for initiatives and programs under the Disability Act that defines 10% of initiatives allocated to persons with disability, giving that sense of belonging, sense of ownership, etc. How far has that gone in implementation? This is one way of addressing it. Addressing cultural norms, cultural belief, how to do it, and investing in what you could call grassroots communication strategies. Government before now had MAMSA in those days.
Yes.
That did public announcements and all of that. We used to have them in our villages, but that's died in Nigeria, right? So reviving that and being purposeful in addressing those, involving our community leaders, our religious leaders, and people within the sector to purposefully invest in supporting and driving these initiatives is another. So you need to do behavioral change communication effectively, and government will need to begin to take that on board. Before now, we have left behavioral change concepts to development agencies and CSOs, etc. But government must take it. I gave an example of SUBEB, for instance. How far has the Ministry of Education or the primary school board that has offices in each of the local government, what component of it has gone towards education? Or educating our populace. Now, the Community Health Workers Act that employs our community health workers tells you that 60% of a JCHU, junior community health worker time, is spent in the community, educating the community. 40% is in the hospital, in the clinic. But go to any of our clinics, how much time of this JCHU is spent in the community, educating the community members? How much of the CHU that says 60% in the clinic, 40% in the community, how much of the percentage, apart from the annual immunization that World Health Organization will sponsor, UNICEF will sponsor, and they will carry bags into our communities, but they just go there to give polio vaccines. How much of that time is used in education? But the law, the Act provides that 40 to 60% of their time is spent in the community. The law that and the policies that enact your agri-extension officers puts it that in every single community, there must be an agri-extension officer that is spending 80% of his or her time moving from one household to the other, educating farmers on improved methods, improved seedlings. How much of that time is happening? Completely none. So government must revive all of these structures. Now, you will say in Nigeria, actually, what we're suffering from is policititis. That's the huge numbers of policies. We do not lack in that area. What we lack is the deliberate efforts to actually implement. So we must revive this. I've given snipers of instances and a little examples, right? So when you talk about educating to solve community norms and beliefs, and so you need to, not that we're heaping every blame on government, but government already have those structures. So we should just simply revamp them. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not bringing anything. We're just simply saying, go back and ensure that your agri-extension officers are back in your communities. We have huge number of unemployed agri graduates that are in the country that you could just simply just employ even through the civil service. Put them as agri-extension officers, equip them and ensure that they are doing that level of education. The CHUs are doing their jobs. And you see, multi-sectorally, they are bringing in the suburb officers. You have education extension officers, you call them, that stays in each local government. You go to every local government now, they probably are in their farming, other than in their office, or other in the communities, educating parents on how it is profitable to educate the girl child. How is it possible that government has a school here, that it is free? Because in most cases, the villagers don't even know that those schools are free. Because the system, when you go there, they must make you, they will say you buy only uniform and books, right? But every day, there's a levy imposed on these poor kids. Either shake my hand levy, whatever kind of levy that they put about. And then it also discourages. But you have the education officers, extension officers that are away from the schools that the suburb manage. So they are telling them, no, if you go to the school is free. So that they are able to actually hold the school headmaster accountable. Because they could easily say, no, you say it is free. But when we went to school X, the headmaster said we should bring register fees. He is able to educate that there's nothing like register fee. Government has not put the register fee. So this parent is now empowered. When next he goes to the school and the headmaster pushes his child out for register fee, he said, no, the government does not put the register fee. I will report you. So he goes back to the extension officer and say, this headmaster X has register fee. Then this extension officer goes back to the education officer of the local government and says school X is putting register fee. And then the education register calls the headmaster to question him because the headmaster reports to him. You see how the small accountability, I'm going to give you just a little example around how this kind of simple things are reviving those extension officers within the community to enhance the level of education of our poor and vulnerable goes a long way to reviving the entire structure. Doing this alone revives the education sector at that level because people are now have confidence in government, because people are being educated, people know. The same thing goes to health. The same thing goes to agriculture. The same thing goes to other sectors of the economy that we already have structures within the local government that are strengthening communication at that level, and the community are able to hold accountable. This small example of education, you see how the father of this child or the mother of this child is able to or the single parent is not, left crying that he doesn't have a means. She is empowered with that knowledge that government is providing school for free. And so he is not being burdened by all the small levies that they charge, thinking that nobody is listening, and then they exploit them and deny them access to education. But he's empowered with knowledge. Knowledge is power. And government has various structures to empower communities, revive those extension officers' roles, equip them to be able to do their jobs, that they themselves, doing that job appropriately, educates the community to effectively access the services that government is providing and holding them accountable. That way, the amount of money that we're pushing into enhancing the quality of education, building primary schools, ensuring that we have books in our schools, it is then begin to make sense, right? And this is just a small example around that. You can then take those examples to agriculture, health, water supply, electricity, etc., right? So when you then invest in your community rural electrification program, and they tell you that they have provided solar power in all of these communities, at the back end there's a community extension person that has, from the local and has educated the community that the solar power they are bringing to you is for free, you cannot pay a dime. So the officer that is put in charge to look at that installation is not charging the villagers one kobo to ensure that he maintains it and tell you that no, we need to pay for it to be maintained. The extent he already has the knowledge that this rural electrification program is for free and you should not charge me. You see how reviving those extension officers educate and revive or revamp accountability structure that makes sure that the investment then becomes very meaningful.
Okay, so you talked about we having policies, but in this case, on this social protection policy, what do you think are its challenges, its strength and weakness, and do you think that we need a policy review?
Yes, of course, policies are living documents, they are living documents that you review every time. So when the policy was set up in 2017 and signed, there was no COVID. There was no removal of oil subsidy. So perhaps it has a gap in shock response. So it needs to be reviewed. Sure, water and sanitation, power, youth and sports, etc. Women that then contribute to it. And everyone then comes in and takes all the various sections and aspects of the policy back to their ministries, implement and brings back the report to the steering committee that then puts it together to say how we are moving around it. First, that government structure has not been put in place. First gap of the policy and first failure. Has it been moved to the states? A number of states have adopted the policy. Kaduna has, Lagos has, a couple of other, I think about 12 states in the federation out of 36 states. The other states need to. Even in all of the states of the federation that have adopted, have they put in place the governance structure that ensures the implementation of policy? Arguably, no, right? Huge gap of the policy. So, the government needs to take this on. In the next review of the policy, it must come in clear. And we also need to be very focused on it and not apolitical in terms of even defining what the policy is. So that we're looking at it strictly from the lens of a strategic approach to poverty alleviation in our country. We're not looking at it from the lens other than that, and then defining it on that level and being able to implement it. So the failures are multifaceted, starting from the governance structure that has not been able to put in place. In the next review, they must define very clearly that governance structure, and they must define the various sectorial needs and gaps. And each of these sectors and each of these ministries must be purposeful in at least establishing a desk that is responsible for implementation at each of the ministries. This becomes the technical leads that are contributing to a coordinated technical working group stationed at the Ministry of Budget and Planning for the technical folks to bring in the reports and bring in the efforts that they are making. So the policy, far from anywhere near achieving its goals, but a step in the right direction for having the policy at all. A step in the right direction for government being purposeful to sign a policy and put a policy in place. Now it is evident that this has been brought into focus. The next step is to bring the policy alive, implementing it, measuring its impact, identifying the gaps, and bringing in programs that will ensure that those gaps are closed to effectively address the challenges of the policy.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Opera, for this time that you're giving us to look at this policy exhaustively. We really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Now, this brings us to the end of the concluding part of the social protection policy that we have been looking at. And we have Dr. Yowakwa Apera, who has really given us exhaustive insight on the policy. Now, this is all we can take for now. Let's join the program for more. Stay with us.
Generally, Nigeria, compared to the rest of the world, is just starting in terms of policy regarding social protection. I say that because in many climes, there are various aspects of this social protection which is not obtainable in our climate. And when we talk about social protection, it really talks not just about vulnerable. If you live abroad in the Western countries, for instance, and you are unemployed, what we call minimum wage, it gets paid to you monthly. For the reasons of illness, you are not able to be as productive as you would be. You get supplement, you know, to give you social protection. In addition to other things like health insurance, education, subsidy, food subsidy, and all that. Because when we talk about insecurity or protection, it can be in many ways. It can be through food, through employment, through a lot of things. So what we see in this country is that when there is hardship, government announces that they are setting up a social investment program, a cash transfer. These are small stopgaps that, well, it's a beginning. But in terms of where it should be, we are not yet there yet.
The primary responsibility of any government is protection of life and property. You provide shelter, food, Medicare, and all sorts of things. It's their own corporate social responsibility, which even some other organizations are even working on. I don't think government is doing enough. Imagine the people in the IDP camp. The accommodation is not enough. They just put them in a one classroom. No, the children there are really not being taken care of. Some of them fall sick. No Medicare. Nobody is there until some people come around maybe to look at them. So they don't have enough food, no water. Imagine, and no toilet facilities. They do open system, they defecate outside, flies will bring it in. So the whole environment is unsafe. They don't have enough food, they don't have clothing. Some of them are even partially naked, half naked, and things like that. So I think government is lagging behind in the corporate social responsibility of its citizens, especially those in IDP camp. They should make a way of how to program, better shelter for them, Medicare, and then food and water, if really they want to take care of them.
The government can do a lot. The government is the custodian of the commonwealth of the people. And so when there is issue, there must first of all be the political will. It's not so much that we have representatives who are in their comfort zones and not feeling the pulse of the people who are actually bearing the brunt of these things. So it can be done at several levels, beginning from the things that people spend money on. If it is school fees that is eating up your resources, government can moderate that. Why not even make school free from primary even up to university level? If it is healthcare access that is taking all the money, why not make access to health universal? Why not put in mechanisms in place such that people who are even doing business are able to break even? What we call tax rebates and all of that. Now, if you even set up a small shop, you'll find people both from the local government up to the state and federal coming to collect the little that if you are driving a commercial vehicle, there are so many taxes and revenues that you have to plow into the government. That is some little way, practical, that government can do, apart from the other poverty alleviation and other things that you and I may not even know how granular, how much it can even get to those who need it. People who are engaged in income generation activities, including even farmers, how are we able to provide implements for them? Implements in terms of fertilizer, implements in terms of improved seedlings, so that they don't need to go and spend plenty of money. Most times we find out that they produce, they harvest, but they don't have storage facility. So there's a lot of wastage. And that's a big loss economically. So government, how many local governments do we have mass grain storage facilities, silos that farmers can store their produce at little or no expense so that this produce can last throughout the year, not only during farming season or rainy season. Even when we experience shortage or when food stocks are low, they can still go to these places and get out these grains, get out these tubers, which would have been preserved for them by the government at minimal cost. That way, you are empowering the people. That way, you are giving them social protection. And there are several other examples, that we can do. But when we think of the big picture of doling out cash, whether it is 20,000, that's just like a drop in the ocean. It has to be a holistic approach. If you take a holistic approach, cutting across all the segments, be it education, be it agriculture, be it other micro, small and medium scale enterprises, there are things that you can do, even as government, to ensure that you provide social protection for your people.
A lot of people want to come into NIPSS. Not everybody can make it, but for those who are selected and come in here, just know this, you make a difference. Once you go out there, please just continue pushing what you have. Don't listen to the fact that you're elitist. Just listen to the fact that you make a difference and go out there and make that difference.
You cannot build a better society if you don't take care of the senior citizens. And you can't build a better society if you don't take care of the junior citizens, the younger ones that are coming.
Guest on Alumni Chat is Commodore Suleiman Dahun, MNI. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Okay. Now, what was your experience like here in the Institute as a participant?
Well, as a middle-ranking senior naval officer, before I came to NIPSS, I had attended the junior staff course at the Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji, as well as the senior course. So I came here sufficiently prepared for the rigors of the senior executive course. But even at then, when I came in, I discovered that the curriculum here is far more demanding than what I was used to.
Wow. All right then. What has the experience so far imparted in your life and your career?
The senior executive course impacts you in 4 fundamental ways. First and foremost, it deepens your intellectual depth. It also sharpens your analytical mind. And then it grounds you better in policy research, which is aimed towards a better society. But most importantly, most fundamentally, passing through NIPSS imbues you with greater patriotic zeal, because the experience here exposes you to the critical issues of state, in this case the Nigerian state, which have to be resolved in order for our nation Nigeria to take her rightful place in the Committee of Nations.
There's this narrative that the Alumni Association of the Institute is an elitist group. What is your opinion?
It is not a coincidence that from the beginning of time, we've always had elites in the human society. In the medieval era, there were knights, there were lords, the nobility, across the Western civilization. Even before prehistory, we had prophets, sages, saints. Then, in the last 300 years, with the formation of the nation state, we've had, outstanding statesmen. Let's go back to the foundation of Western civilization, which is ancient Greece. You discover that they had a parliament of nobles. And those societies produced people like Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Oliver Cromwell. Side by side was the development of the emergence of the Vatican, the Roman Catholic institution. So there's nothing wrong in elitism. In every society, there will be elites. Elites are the leading lights of society. They are the conscience of society. If elites think well, act well, behave well, show example, society will progress.
How impactful has Annie been to the Institute?
Now, if you look at Nigeria, from the formation of NIPSS till date, most of our leaders have been proud members of Annie. They have contributed their quota to the development of this country. Is it General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida? Is it General Abdul Salam Abubakar? Is it General Sani Abacha? Or is it late Mumabasa of blessed memory? Whoever is somebody in this country passed through NIPSS and is automatically a member of Annie. So by extension, Annie has produced members of society, exemplary members of society, who have left their footprints in the journey of our great nation. Annie, members of Annie, are in all strata, facets of our society. Annie has made contributions in two folds. They've represented the institute well. They have stood and symbolized the ideals of this institution.
Now, what were the circumstances that brought about you coming back as a directing staff?
I had the good fortune of serving, as a spokesman of the Nigerian Navy. And my principal was a very thorough, highly disciplined, awesome personality. I served him for 3 years as spokesman. And I guess I did my job very well. And lo and behold, he called me one day and said, Suleiman, I'm sending you to NIPSS because I believe the knowledge will be beneficial to you even after you have left the service. By act of providence, I found myself here.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, being a directing staff comes with a lot of responsibilities. How have you been able to combine that with family life?
You have to compartmentalize your personal schedule. For me, I'm not your typical military officer. I had before now been with my family throughout my career. I have never parted with my family, from my family. I've never stayed away from my family. From the time I married my wife till 2023, I had always been with my family. Okay. So this is a new experience for me. Okay. But to be chosen to come here and impart knowledge is a rare opportunity. It's a rare privilege. Directing staff across the services, across training institutions are a special breed of, officers who have been adjudged to have the competence and the character required to impart knowledge.
Now let us come back to your personal life. How do you unwind?
Quality time with my family is not negotiable.
That's good.
In the course of my career, I've had the good fortune of traveling far and wide. And my appetite for travel is still undampened.
With your vast experience, what advice would you give to people looking up to you, especially the youth, hoping to be where you are today?
Work extra hard. Have self-respect. Be the best that you can be. And dreams are quite achievable.
We appreciate your time with us. We hope that next time we come your way, you'll still oblige us to talk about national issues and policies. Thank you indeed.
It's like you went to Command and Staff College. That's how we do vote of thanks. When next Institute Corps College, I hope you oblige us.
Keep watching.
Keep watching.
Keep watching NIPSS Policy TV.
Own your moments in South Africa this Easter holiday. Explore new holiday deals at southafrica.net. Come journey with us.
In conclusion, all social protection programs are captured under right-based social welfare systems for all Nigerians. We have somewhat examined this, and we can deduce that policies on social protection should be result-oriented and policies strictly implemented and supervised for the greater good of all Nigerians. This is where we call it a day. Thank you for watching. It's a delight to know you're always there. Remember, the Nigeria Project is our collective responsibility. See you next time, and have a good day. I am Chana Ejoga.